Alright, Section 9, Welding, Cast Iron, Cast Steel, Carbon Steel Forging, Cast Iron, Carbon Steel Forging. General parts composed of these mouth with repair with some of the same principle that you would in there. Assembly repair with the brains and soldering, joining equipment originally used not available to suitable for the purpose of the instant with the cast iron, cast steel with the mother may be repaired with a gas welding, arc welding, or brazing. The parts of the section may be with the carbon steel originally accomplished. Assembled with spot projection flash welding may be repaired with the gas arc welding, and the same the true with the forging. Great cast iron low ductility, therefore will not expand and stretch to any of the considerable extent before breaking and cracking them because of the characteristic preheating necessary with the cast iron weld with the aesthetic settling with the process of the cow with the beam weld with the metal arc without preheating if the welding is carefully controlled. Large casting of the complicated section of this such as the motor block can be welded without dismantling preheating of the special electrodes designed with the purpose usable and desirable. Generally weldable cast steel with the comparable to those of the wrought steel with the cast steel with the usually welded in order to join one cast with another will do a raw steel item the repair to defect the damaged casting. Weldability of steel is primarily function composition and heat treatment, therefore the procedure precautions required for the welding raw steel is also and applied with the cast steel. Similar composition, heat treatment, and strength welding of the cast steel with the can sometimes be simplified by the first considering the load in the air with it being welded. The actual strength needed in the weld of the casting often is complex with the specific analysis may be required for the only part entire structure when welding section of the stainless steel does not require the full strength of the casting. Low strength of the welded rods and wires can sometimes be used with the welded being the casting lower strength with linear analysis cast steel part under the such of the conditions deposit welded metal usually with a match only the strength of the lower strength member. Heating the treatable electrodes water welding sometimes can be done with a vinyl heat treating after being subject to austenitizing treatment. Heating above upper critical temperature and weld deposit with the carbon content at less than 1200% usually with a however lower mechanical property have the welded and stress relief condition. Carbon steel is divided in three groups: low, medium, high. Low carbon steel is included with the carbon content of 0.03%. Low carbon steel is not held and appreciable welded, therefore do not require preheating post heating except with the special cases such as the heavy sections to be welded. Alright, medium carbon steel that include those of the containing 300 to 55 hundredths of the percent of the carbon inside these steel that preheated with the 300 500 degrees Fahrenheit before welding an electrode low carbon heavy coated with a trait with a reverse polarity with similar to those with the metal with the arc welding low carbon steel with the satisfactory with the steel with the group of the preheating temperature will vary depending on the thickness of the material of the carbon content after the welding of the entire joint should be heated between the 1000 and 1200 degrees Fahrenheit slowly cold to relieve stress from the base metal adjacent to the weld. High carbon steel will include those with the carbon content exceeding the 5500% because of the high carbon content heat treatment. They usually given in the steel that their basic properties impaired with the arc welding preheat 800 degrees Fahrenheit before the welding stress relief with the heating of the 1200 1450 degrees Fahrenheit slow with the cooling be used to avoid the hardness and the brittleness of using its own either metal steel with the stainless steel with the electrodes can be used in this steel. Parts that were originally forged welded may be repaired with gas or arc welding. High hardness alloy steel with varieties. The alloy steel that have been developed to obtain with a high strength with a high hardness, corrosion resistant, other special properties. Most of these steels depend on the special heat treatment of the process in order to develop the desired characteristics of the finished state. Many of these steels can be welded with a heavy coated electrode shield arc type of the welding is composition similar to those of the base metal with a low carbon electrode. Low carbon electrodes can also be used with some of the steel, stainless steel with electrodes when preheating. Non-practical, undesirable heat-treated steels should be preheated if possible in order to minimize the formation of the hard zones or layers in the base of the metal adjacent to the weld. Molten metal should not be overheated for the reason the welding heat should be controlled. The depositing welding material with a narrow stringer beads in many cases the procedure outlined with a medium carbon steel with a high carbon steel, including the principle of surface fusion can be used with welding alloy to steels. High yield strength, low alloy structural steel with a special steel of the temper to obtain with extreme toughness, durability, special alloys generatable markup. Then these steels require the special treatment of obtain satisfactory weldments. Alright, procedure, grey cast iron. Edge preparation, edge of the joint will be chipped out of the ground, formed at a 60-degree angle. The bevel of the V shape to extend 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the crack with a small hole with the drill within each of the end of the crack to prevent it from spreading. All grease and dirt and other foreign substances should be removed with washing suitable clean material. Welding technique, cast iron can be made with a coated steel electrode. With this method, it should be used as an emergency measure. When using steel electrode, the contraction of the steel welded metal with the carbon picked up with the cast iron may be either welded metal with the hardness of the welded metal causes by rapid cooling must be conserved with the steel strength more than the cast iron. When cooled, steel electrode due to the uneven shrinkage will cause strains within the joint after welding. When large quantity of the filler metal is applied with the joint of the cast iron, may correct just back off the line of fusion unless the preventive steps are taken to overcome these difficulties. The prepared joint should be welded with depositing the metal in the short string beads 3/4 inch to 1 inch long. These should be made intermittently within some case of the back step of the skips to achieve to avoid hard spots. The arc should be struck from the V and not on the surface of the base metal. Each short length of the welded metal applied to the joint should be lightly peened on the hot of the small beam hamper and allow to cool before additional metal is applied. Peening action forges the metal relieve the cooling stress. The electrode should be 1/8 inch in diameter to prevent excessive welding heat. The welding should be done with a reverse polarity. Weaving of the electric should be held within a minimum. Each weld deposit should be thoroughly cleaned before additional metal is added. Cast iron electrodes used when the subsequent machining welding joint is required. The stainless steel electrodes used with the machining weld does not require the procedure weld, making the welds electrodes in the same outline with the welding of the mild steel electric. Stainless steel electrode provides excellent fusion between the filler and the base metal with great care, but it must be taken to avoid cracking in the weld because the stainless steel expand with contracts approximately 50% with more of the mild steel with the equal change of the temperature. Studding. Cracks in large castings sometimes prepared to a studding in this process of the fracture of the remove the grinding of the V groove. The holes with drilled and tampered with the angle of the and on each side of the groove. The studs are screwed into the holes in distance equal to the diameter of the studs, which upper ends with the protecting approximately 1/4 inch above the cast iron surface of the studs. And the sealed weld is in place with the 1 or 2 beads around each stud tied together with the welded metal beads, which should be short lengths and long, and each length of the beam to prevent the hot stress and cracking upon cooling. Each bead should be allowed to cool thoroughly with a clean before additional metal deposit studding method can be applied. The edges of the joint should be chipped out with a machine. This is done by the round nose tool of the U groove in which the welded metal should be deposited. Alright, 1247 shows the studding method of cast iron repair. Or metal arc brazing and cast iron. Cast iron can be brazed with a heavy coating of the reverse polarity bronze electrode with joints made should be prepared with a minimum manner similar to do with the oxyacetylene brazing and cast iron. Higher strength joint depends on quality of the bonds between the filler with the metal with the cast iron base metal. Carbon arc welding and cast iron casting can be welded with the carbon arc cast iron rod with the carbon arc welding flux. The joint should be preheated, move the carbon electrode along the surface of the end, preventing the two of the rapid cool. After the welding, molten puddle of the wool can be worked with the carbon electrode moving slag oxide that formed on the surface of the welds made with the carbon arc cooled more slowly and are not as hard as those made with the metal arc with the cast iron electrode, which the welds are machinable. Alright, cast steels. Joint design with the cast steel with weldments are similar to those used with the raw steel. The choice of the electrode filler is based on the type of the cast steel, with being used the strengths needed to join the post-weld heat treatment of when the carbon and low alloy cast steels. Electrode recommended with the comparable wrought steel plate should be used with the authentic stainless steel that are joined with either cast. The wrought ferritic materials of the proper filler metal depends on surface condition. Alright, surface carbon steel, low carbon steel with metal arc welding and metal arc welding in the rear with a thin coated with a heavy coated steel with the arc type of the electrodes. The electrodes are low carbon type of the 1/10 to 1400% of low carbon sheet with the plate material that have been exposed to the low temperature of the preheated slightly with room temperature before welding. Welding sheet metal up to 1/8 inch thick and thickness. Plain square butt joint type of the edge preparation may be used with a long seam within the weld with the material, but the edges should be spaced to allow shrinkage because the deposit of metal tends to pull the plates together. The shrinkage is less severe, and the arc welding gas metal welding spacing approximately 1/8 of an inch per foot with the seam of the will success suffice. The back step and the skip of the welding technique should be used with the short seams that are fixed and prevent warp distortion and minimize the residual stress. Heavy placement should be beveled to provide include angle support up to 60 degrees depending on the thickness of this part to be tacked and welded and placed in short intervals along the seam. First and root bead should be made with the electrode small enough for the diameter to obtain the good penetration fusion based on the joint. 1/8 of an inch 532 for the electrode is unsuitable for the purpose of their speed. Should be thoroughly cleaned and chipped in wire brush before additional layers with the weldment. Well, the metal or deposit of the additional pass of the filler metal should be made with the 532 3/16 of an inch electrode. Overhead welding best result of the same with the string beads throughout the weld. With when welding, heavy section be leveled. Both sides of the weave bead should be deposited alternately on one side, then on the other. To reduce the amount of the distortion welding structure, each bead will be cleaned thoroughly with the removal of all the scale, oxide slag before the additional metal is deposited. With the motion of the electrode with the control of the made of the uniform thickness to prevent undercutting, overlapping of the edges. Carbon arc welding, low carbon sheet with a plate with a 3/4 inch thickness. Satisfactory welding, carbon arc welding process construction against the plate edge with prepared with a manner similar. Required in metal arc welding, fluxes are used in the joint filler with a metal added with the oxyacetylene welding. Gaseous shield that should be provided around the molten base filler metal with the means of flux coated welding rod. But the welding should be done without overheating the molten metal. But these precautions not taken with the welded metal will absorb an excessive amount of the carbon electrode, oxygen, nitrogen of the air will cause the brittleness of the welded metal. Alright, medium carbon steel with the plate should be prepared with welding in a manner similar to the use of the low carbon steel with the welding. Low carbon steel electrode with welding heat should be carefully controlled with the overheating of the welded metal with excessive penetration of the side walls of the joint. The control accomplished directly with the electrode moving toward previously deposited filler metal adjacent with the sidewall toward the sidewalls directly by using the procedure welded metal and the wash up against the side of the joint and fused without the deep of the excessive penetration. High welding heat will cause large areas of the base metal in the fusion adjacent to the welds to become hard and brittle. The areas of the hard zone of the base metal can be kept at the minimum, making the weld to the shear small string of the weave, the bead, the witch metal limit to the heat input. Each of the bead layer with the welded metal will refine the grain of the weld immediately beneath the annealing, the lessening of the hardness produced in the base weld with the previous bead, with the possible with the finished joint that should be heat treated after welding. Stress relieving the normally used joint mild steel with a high carbon alloy should be annealed. The welding of the medium carbon steel with the stainless steel electrode metal should be deposited with the stringer beads. This will prevent cracking the welded metal with the fusion zone with the depositing welded metal upper layers of the welds made of heavy section of the weaving motion. Electrodes should under no circumstance have 3 electrode diameters. Each successive bead of the weld should be chipped with the brush and cleaned with prior laying of another bead. Alright, another high carbon steel, the welding heat should be adjusted, provided with a good fusion with the sidewall joint with excessive penetration control of the welding heat accomplishes depositing welded metal with small stringer beads. Excessive puddling with the metal should be avoided because of the cause of the carbon picked up at the base of the internal, which will make the weld of the metal and brittle from between the filler metal with the sidewall should be confined with a narrow side of the strip of the fusion with the produce the prescribed medium carbon steels. Same procedure for the edge preparation, cleaning of the welds. The sequence of the weak welding beads that are prescribed in low medium carbon size carbon steel applied with the high carbon steels. Small high carbon steels are sometimes repaired with building up the worn surfaces, whether done in piece, so they should be annealed, soften the heating of the red heat with the cooling slowly with a piece of it should be welded built up with a medium carbon high strength electrodes and heat treated after welding original properties. Alright, forgings usually welded the gas arc welding process manner similar than parts of the originally assembled in spot projection flash welding. High hardness alloy steels could be welded with a heavy coated electrode with a shield arc type whose composition similar with the base metal with the carbon electrodes could be used with some of the steel with the stainless steel electrodes are effective with the preheating of the non-practical, undesirable. Heated treated steels should be preheated with impossible in order to minimize formation of the hard zone layers of the base metal adjacent to the weld. Molten metal should be not overheated, though for this reason the welded heat with the control of the deposition of the weld metal with narrow stringer beads may give the procedure outline with a medium carbon steel, high carbon steel include principle of the surface fusion welding of the alloy steels. Reliable the welding, high strength of the low alloy structural steels can be performed by using the following guidelines. Hydrogen number the one enemy of the sound weld of the alloy steels. Therefore use a low hydrogen. Therefore use only a low hydrogen electrode to prevent underbead cracking, cause the hydrogen pick up the electrode coating with the release in the arc of absorbing the molten metal. If the electrodes are airtight container, immediately open up the container, place for the electrodes and vent holding the 250-300 degrees Fahrenheit. In the event the electrodes are not in the airtight container, put them in a ventilated baking oven and bake up to 1 hour and quarter, 1 1/4 hours of the while still warm. Placed in the holding oven still UV, the electrodes should be kept dry to eliminate absorption of hydrogen. Testing measures should according to the Mill E 222.00. Note, moisture stabilizer is ideal of holding over the field use. Holding oven for the field use. Electrodes identified with the classification number as well, which are always marked on the electrode to contain the low hydrogen coating for the two numbers of the classification 15, 16, and 18. Electrodes 5/32 and 1/8 of an inch for the diameter, most commonly used since the more adaptable to all types of welding steel. Welding type of steel wire electrodes, submerged arc, gas shielding arc, are not classified according to strength of the welding wire flux combination. Due to the steel with the stress of relief, the strength cannot contain more than 5/10 of the 5/100 of a percent of vanadium. The welded metal with more than 5/100% of the vanadium may become brittle and stress of the relief using either submerged arc, gas arc, welding processes to weld high yield strength, low alloy structural steel, low strength steel, wire flux, wire gas combination, same as the recommended lower strength steel. For welding plates under 1 inch thick, the preheating of 50 degrees is not required except to remove the surface from moisture of the base metal. And then it is important to avoid excessive heat concentration welding in order to weld the area they cool rather than a heat input. Monograph heat input calculator can be used to determine heat input weld for satisfactory welds with good welded press defined section along with the following procedure. Use straight stringer breaking whenever possible. Restrict weave the partial weave pattern. Best results are obtained by slight circular motion with the electrode with a weave with a never exceeding 2 electrode diameters. Never use full weave pattern and skip weave. And weld is a practical. Painting of the weld is sometimes recommended to relieve stress while the cooling of large pieces. Alright, your fillet weld should be smooth with a controlled contour. Avoid the two toe cracks and undercutting the electrodes using filler welds, which have lower strength than those of the butt weld. Air hammer painting fillet welds can help to prevent cracks, especially with the weld before stress relief. The soft steel of the weld wire pedestal can help absorb shrinkage forces. Butter welding in the toe area before the actual fillet welding strengthens the air to where the toe crack may start. A bead is laid at the toe area of the ground off, and then ground off prior to the actual fillet welding. The butted weld bead must be located with the toe pass of the fillet will be laid directly over during the actual fillet welding. Because of the additional materials involved, fillet welding and the cooling rate is increased and the heat inputs may extend about 25%. That was section 9.